So it's called Christ Above All Gods, in whom would you trust? So, most people do not know that the major problems in this world has arisen out of the worship of false gods. These false gods have revealed themselves as the producers and inspirers of every evil thought, word, and deed in their so-called sacred books. Their dualistic nature, in turn, is instilled amongst the community, making it impossible for people to establish peace within their family, society, or the world. Indeed, people are not able to respect the rights of others unless they come out of their bondage of these unreliable gods. Believing in delusive gods who are not able to solve the problem of evil is nothing different to the sanctuary and invasion that tears down the peace within a family and the world community. Therefore, the purpose of this is to challenge the heart, mind, and consciousness of all those who hear it, that they might discover the only true and holy one who is the source of purity, oneness, and unity. This is the one who can rid the nations of dualism, duality, and division. Impute and delusion gods are the cause of divisions, disunity, and hostility. If God is not pure and has division within his own nature, he will in no way be able to lead people to peace with one another, even though they may long for unity and peace in their inner being. For this reason, this aims to draw people's attention to the deeper layers of religions and to distinguish the true religion from the false. There are many religions in this world, and also extreme variations within each religion as a result of constant interference throughout history, covering all religions and their sects. Their sects was not the mission of this. The overriding focus of this is on the differences amongst gods and their stance against Satan or evil. Except in Christianity, gods in most other religions more or less hold a similar stand towards Satan. By evaluating the main religions, I have indirectly evaluated almost all of the world religions. I also thought it would be better to give a very brief introduction about each religion to encourage and help the readers to undertake further studies. Why would people follow a religion? Different reasons can be traced. For the interest of people in one religion over another, often at times it is not their interest, but the internal forces imposed on people that leave them no choice but to follow a particular religion. For example, whenever people are unable to control their surrounding human or natural forces, they prefer to show alliance rather than be killed. The same applies when people are compelled to follow a certain religion. People also believe that the creator of the universe is the highest authority and desires everybody to be under his control and harmony with him. This is another reason why people follow the religion practiced by their community in order to try and fulfill the desires of their creator. The development of civilization has also led some people to search for an explanation that provides purpose, goals, and hope for their lives and life itself. This has led them to select an idea of or religion that best meets their needs in order to attain their goals. Willingly or unwillingly, every person in the world is affected by religion. Various ethnies hold religious values that mean they act or react differently to other people, at least in some areas of their belief. There are people, at least in some areas of their belief. There are differences everywhere, and the differences are reflected in society, in everybody's relationship and fellowship with others. Even atheists not been able to remove religious values from their lives. Therefore, religious values are present everywhere we go. They are present in the lives of everybody with whom we have contact, as we share the opportunities provided by living in a society, small or large. Therefore, understanding each other's belief is of vital importance for the well-being of a society. It helps us to discover the long-lasting values for establishing uneasing relationship and friendship with one another. Ignorance, indifference, and passive tolerance that always accompany lack of understanding and chance miscommunication and eludation, and therefore can create catastrophic events in the community, such as happened on September 11th, heartbreaking and irreparable forever. There are example. There are ample examples of various communities that had lived in a country side by side for centuries, and in some of these cases for thousands of years, but are still alien or hostile to each other. The main reason for this is misunderstanding or lack of understanding. Another influence we see in today is how overtly the internationalizes of technology, globalization has brought people of various nations together and forced almost all countries in the world to taste multiculturalism, a blessing in many ways. However, the curse arises where people do not understand each other and are not integrated peacefully. Secularism was not able to provide people with a proper understanding of multiculturalism. It welcomed people from all cultural and religious backgrounds, but ignored the great need to discover the deeper cultural or religious tastes that was carried by each person when they traveled to new places. All that we have inherited from secularism is a passive approach to tolerance in which people are no longer able to question the changes that have occurred in the society. Passive tolerance is not like creative tolerance that promotes knowledge and search for the best. Instead, it is an ignorant and indifferent tolerance that can be as harmful as aggression. And many believe through the advancement of technology, together with sovereign social laws, the authorities would be able to create a friendlier atmosphere and lead their multi-ethnic societies toward unification. But they neglected the huge effect of religion and therefore overlooked the fact that people respect their religious belief more than they do the law of the society. Some religious people believe that in some cases they have to break the law for the sake of religious vows. And clearly, religion has a deep root in people's ethical, moral, political, economic, and social values. It has to be understood deeply. People tend to only look at the eternal layers of religious messages and then proclaim them all to the same. and heading towards the same goal. Very few in the world have looked at the deeper layers of the religions and analyzed the nature of the various gods in order to see whether or not they are the same. That is why anytime religious conflicts arise among different groups, many shake their heads and say they head toward the same goal and we don't know why they are against each other. Unfortunately, very few have made an scholarly study in order to realize the differences. Time and time again, we hear some say, well, it's the different interpretations of the religion which have led them to the stage or to the acts of terrorism. It is true that to some degree, the different interpretations affect people's relationships with one another, but the major problem of the world is ignorance and lack of understanding by individuals. People are not normally encouraged or interested in spending any time evaluating the motivations that lie behind the scenes and that have major effects in the long run. Leaders in various countries have been successful when they took advantage of this public ignorance. This has enabled them to portray themselves as lovers of people and keepers of peace and justice, whilst at the same time solely fulfilling their selfish desires. Even more influential were those who flavored their dictatorship with religious values, enabled them to trap ignorant people in the claws of their inhuman desires. Since gods and religions dominate the lives of many in the world, followers must wake up and evaluate the ability of their belief system to possibly contribute to their own life, society, and the world. Any guru or divine being who has said, do not lie, do not steal, do not be wicked, do not kill, so on, must be analyzed to see if their lives are transparent and in perfect unity with their messages. People who are following a God need to become certain that he has a pure nature and not a delusive one, having both light and darkness, which cannot match with honesty, love, peace, and justice. A delusive God is a problem, as his message consists of two opposing forces. The life he builds is a delusive goal for life. He gives a delusive and the righteousness and peace that he calls for are delusive. When he enters one's life, he cannot plant purity and oneness in the heart, but only a mixture of love and hatred, a mixture of success and failure, and so on. His inconsistent nature results in double standard lives. He cannot survive on love alone, but also needs deceit, force, hatred, hostility, ignorance, or bigotry. His delusive nature leads people to blind obedience, and thereby he becomes the unquestionable God of all generations. Not even the mighty forces or laws of the superpower countries can rid his hostile values from the heart and mind of his followers. And many times we have seen the leaders of the world, despite the greatness of their political powers, afraid of the hostile spirit of the false gods who run the life of the majority. Fear has prevented them from condemning the spirit of a religion that holds a society to ransom. And furthermore, in some cases, they even praise the spirit, placing the blame for the repressed societies on the men and women who were the agents of the evil spirit, instead of cutting the evil at its root. They only chipped away at the branches. After a while, many more branches grew. from where each branch had been pruned, and not only were nations unable to live a peaceful life, but also fell under the threat of many bloodthirsty and unsociable rebellious leaders. Nothing other than knowledge and understanding could rescue nations from the threat. As the Bible states, when a country is rebellious, it has many rulers, but a man of understanding and knowledge maintains order. Proverbs 28, verse 2. Religious problems cannot be solved through political pressure and games or through the authority of social laws. This is because in the heart of people, religion supersedes all over all other aspects of life. The only solution for religious problems is to work at the level of people's hearts, minds, and consciences. People need encouragement and help to elevate and broaden their understanding, leading them to select the best and most genuine religion. This process of accumulation is costly in some countries, resulting in the death penalty for those who undertake such a course. However, freedoms in other countries provide a golden opportunity for many to investigate the foundation of religions. People in these countries have the freedom to choose the best religion and are able to carry out evangelism and mission to those who have been deprived of this freedom in other lands. The basics for bringing about a change in the quality of people's lives. Knowledge and information opens the eyes of people and unites them to improve the quality of their physical and spiritual lives. On the contrary, ignorance pushes people apart and leads them toward extreme narrow-mindedness and degrades the quality of their life. The quality of religious life improves when someone chooses to be open-minded, but narrow-minded religious people excommunicate themselves from the beauty of life. A beautiful life and its author cannot be discovered through a static mind. It is a shame for the author of life to have a blind followers. Look what the God of Israel said to her, even though she was honoring him with the best of her wealth. For the Lord has spoken, I revealed children and brought them up, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows his master, the donkey his owner's manager. But Israel does not know, my people do not understand. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs and goats. Stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. Come now and let us reason together. Who is the blind, my servant, and deaf like the messenger I sent? Who is blind like the one who committed to me, blind like the servant of the Lord? You have seen so many things, but have paid no attention, and your ears are open, but to hear nothing. It pleased the Lord for the sake of his righteousness to make his law great and glorious. God had no question in their sacrifices. God had no pleasure in their sacrifices, while they continued to close their eyes to a deeper understanding. A belief must not be blindly accepted, nor in the way be rejected or left behind without reasoning. We are the creatures of insight, reasoning, and logic. Leaving a religion and accepting the other without an understanding of the tenets of each is like being a blind and deaf. Can we win any favor with God by our lack of understanding? Research and investigation are beneficial in any situation. It will help the world to rescue itself from the crisis of false religions and ideals and lead its nations to unity and oneness. Look at how open-minded Jesus was. Look at the Bible's call for openness, searching, comparison, and decision-making. Does not the ear test words as the tongue tastes food? Choose knowledge rather than choice. Gold I have it says choose knowledge rather than choice. Gold I have understanding and power. You will seek me and find me, and when you seek me with all your heart, I will be found, declares the Lord of the Bible. Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Test everything and hold on to the good. Avoid every kind of evil. You may say to yourself, how can we know when a message was not spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet claims in the name of the Lord does not place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken promptly. Do not be afraid of him. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 21, verse 22. You have to let go of the command of God and are holding on to the traditions of men. Mark chapter 7, verse 8. Your faith might not rest on men's wisdom, but on God's power. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 5. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of this world rather than on Christ. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. He will punish those who do not know God. They will be punished with everlasting destruction and shut out from the presence of the Lord and from the majesty of power, and on the day he comes to be glorified in the holy people and to be marveled at among all those who have believed. Although men claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the moral God for images made to look like moral men, and birds and animals and reptiles. My purpose is that they may be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that they may have the full riches of complete understanding, in order that they may know the mystery of God, namely Christ, in whom are hidden are all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those who by nature are not gods. But now you know God. Galatians chapter 4, verse 8, verse 9. No other religion in the world has encouraged such a deep understanding of what it is needed for the exodus from ignorant and blind obedience. Our complementary error is the error of a boom in the education. It should be the error where people seek the answers to the most difficult questions of life. The need to search for the best religion is more urgent than ever since the rise of man. Internationalism and globalization have taken their giant steps across national borders, ignoring the barriers that exist among the nations and bringing them much closer to each other. Globalization needs to stretch its hands to the deeper levels of the cultural and religious values of the nations in order to find the best values for better integration of the world. The entrepreneurial and omniscient spirit of Christ supports this. Contemporary research. Jesus claimed that he was Lord of all time. Matthew 28, verse 18-20, Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8. He certainly is pleased with those who have a bigger picture for life and for the world. He knows that if we do not have a full understanding of the world values, we will be easily influenced by the ideas and beliefs that have always tried to impose themselves forcibly on societies. People need to have intellectual reasons for anything and anybody they choose to follow. So, tips about a genuine religion or belief. The true belief or religion must be able to plant the spirit of the real God in the heart and life of people in a practical sense and drive out the evil spirit. True religion must respect the free will of any individual in the world. Third, true religion does not oppose itself on others, but instead respects the voice of free will and becomes open to the worldwide criticism. Fourth, true religion does not compromise by working with ulterior motives, but encourages honesty as the essential quality required in human relationships. 5. True religion comes to serve humankind by becoming a tool for the development of a warm and wide understanding among diverse nations in order to remove the barriers of unity among them. 6. True religion allows people to structurize its values in its leader's life in order to learn more about and have a deeper understanding of the concepts and ideas that are the basics of that religion. 7. True religion calls upon people to refer to their own God, given the capability, examine the words of prophets and religious leaders, search for the best possible values in the world, and choose the best with a free will. The truth cannot be discovered by blindly following or obeying the guidance of someone who has never been open to comparison and has never allowed others to do it. 8. A true religion overcomes that spiritual uncertainty many feel in this world. It gives certainty for the future. 9. A true religion meets at all times critical of truthfulness and becomes the good example for all generations. This chapter is called Everybody is God in Hinduism. India is a place of Hinduism origin and development. The earliest worship in Hinduism was animistic. Hinduism was not founded on the teaching of anyone and has reached to its present state under the influence of many nations, cultures, beliefs, and practices. External factors have ideas, beliefs, and traditions makes it hard to arrive at a sound. Some people believe in one God, while some others believe in many, and some in none. Some follow a life of privation and meditation, while some others follow a completely opposite route, taking part in a sexual cult. While some are tolerant, others are ruthless and harsh. In this way, the values contradict each other sharply. So in Hinduism, there is no false religion for Hinduism. All religions are good, have the same goal, and lead to the same God, they believe. This is because men and women of every faith are considered the manifestations of the same supreme being having the same goal and destination. And some Hindu teachers regard Jesus as a divine Lord and his words the same in essence with the words of their scriptures. Hindus also worship demonic spirits, the living saints animals such as cows, monkeys, snakes, and others. This does not mean that every god is eternal. Some of them are the offspring of others, and like all things, they also will pass away. Gods exercise their power in favor of art and opposition to men and women depending on their respectful or disrespectful deeds towards those gods. And sometimes gods merge into one because they are the manifestations of the same supreme reality that desire the ultimate oneness of all that exists. However, the issue of how inferior gods who have personalities that merge with one another can be absorbed into the ultimate God who has no personality is an issue that brings the falsity of Hindu philosophy under question. It is believed that sometimes a deity allows himself to be born on the earth in order to conquer evil and restore peace and order. An incarnation of a god is called an avatar. Avatar. Hindus believe the whole universe and everything that exists, including gods, are subject to constant change. Nothing is permanent. Mountains and rocks will disappear, even the gods will pass away, and others will take their places. For Hindus, each soul has many lives that die and are reborn again and again. The nature of God in the effect, some Hindus take gods as separate and distant divine beings, where others think of them as different ways of looking at the one reality. The following divisions give a brief description of the nature of Hindu gods and their effect on creation. This is all Hindu. Henophalism, ancient Vedas and Vishnavism and Shiva is that many gods exist, but the supreme reality is one. It is Brahman, the eternal power who controls the universe and is more important than the others. Brahman is made up of many divinities. The three most important ones are Brahma, who is the creator of the universe. The lifetime of Brahma is 12,000 divine years, which is equivalent to 4,320,000 human years. The universe endures as long as the god lives. Brahma is married and his wife is called Saraswati. Rishi, who helps the creator in building the universe and in battle against the enemy. Anytime the need arises, Rishi appears in various living forms such as a fish or tortoise or a boar or dwarf or Buddha, etc., in order to deliver a person or the world from the power of evil. Shiva, who is the destroyer, often accompanied by evil spirits, one of the most important Hindu divinities, and Shiva's wife, Shakti, who is famous for her extreme dualistic natures. The beloved and attractive goddess of motherhood, protection, healing, and belovedness. In this form, she is called Parvati or Emma, the fiery goddess of destruction, murder, and sexuality, and provides death and darkness. In this form, she is called Durga, or Kali. These contrasting natures of the goddess describe birth, death, and destruction in the reincarnation circle. The destruction spirit of Kali is still in the work of India. In the year 2002, Indian police recorded at least one human sacrifice a month through ritual killings in the name of Kali. Hinduism believes in the persistence of a primordial impersonal reality, the one that manifests itself into multiple gods and creatures and is origin of all. There is great philosophy mistake in the heart of this belief. Impersonal beings cannot become impersonal. An impersonal being also cannot manifest itself as a personal being. Since Brahman is believed to be impersonal and has no personality to be described, it cannot manifest itself into other describable beings. Secondly, a complete being cannot multiply into inferior and complete and opposite beings. This belief also shows that the evil, Shaba, is in Brahman, and sin flows down from Brahman into other inferior forms. Pantheism, later called Randacha, describes the one supreme being as an immaterial, impersonal, uncreated, transcendent, infinite, indescribable being that is the origin of all manifestations. It, Brahma, is the cause and reason for all that is. Its desire to be multiplied and be born in many, and it said it became many. The Antavarshas teach that Brahma was born in everybody, and that the soul in everybody is identical with Brahman. From this idea, it shows that the more you meditate and understand yourself, the more likely you are to understand Brahman. And this is why meditation has to become so important in the Hindu beliefs. Brahman has distant aspects. One aspect is absolute, which is transcendent, unmanifested, incompressible, and unconceivable. However, the second aspect is relative, and dwells everything and manifests itself as a describable being. All the products of its relative actives, gods, humans, animals, and matters, tend to return to the absolute one, evolving from one level of manifestation to another, and ultimately becoming merged or absorbed into the impersonal aspect of the transcendent Brahman. It is obvious that the same criticism in Hinduism apply to pantheism too. The return of the personal creator into the impersonal is something that does not make sense. If the return of the personal creatures of Brahman's relative nature to its impersonal nature was possible, the coming out or manifestation from absolute impersonal nature would have also had been possible, and therefore Brahman would not need a personal or relative aspect for a manifestation and multiplication. In other words, if return in the association of inferiors to the absolute was possible, departing from the absolute would also be possible. However, we know that it is impossible for the absolute impersonal God to manifest itself in other forms or absorb other beings into itself. Theism sees God as Krishna, as a supreme personal God, who is the cause of power beyond all things in the world. He is the attributes, and therefore he cannot be impersonal. He influences man by his incentives. He is the creator and substance of the universe, either spiritual or material. Krishna too desires the evolution of all that exists into the supreme reality through the continued cycle of transformation. Krishna is the revelation of the God Vishnu in the human form and has become the most popular of all Hindu deities. Alexander's invasion of India also brought with it ideas that rejected the idea of a God who is impersonal, but at the same time loves, and a personal God cannot love. Therefore, a new religious trend appeared that at the end resulted in the birth of a baby god Krishna as the personal and loving God. After he grew to manhood, he danced and slept with women. The woman's hunger for him is interpreted as every soul's longing for God. Sarasukta, Shamyaka, and Yoga of Pancha admit two ultimate realities, Prasad, Avagata, and Prasad is an universal and personal soul that pervades all things and was never involved in the law of karma, and is a personal and is capable of manifestation, is involved in the law of karma. Prakriti has three inner mature tendencies called gunas. Sattva is a tendency that brings light, purity, and knowledge. Rajas is responsible for activity, energy, and dualism. Tama exposes action, producing darkness, heaviness, and ignorance. One opposite inner primary substance of God always tends to dominate the other. However, the gunas clash against each other, and this world came into being by the participation of a certain preparation of each of the three gunas. The major problem of this belief is dualism, the existence of two ultimate realities. This will be described in the later section on Zoroastrianism, and this belief, also called God, is the creator of sin or darkness. Tantra and Yaka Yoga believe that the ultimate reality of the universe is the god Shira, or Shira. Shira, with his divine wife, Shakti, form a state of prominent unity in unmanifestation. Shira represents purity and transcendence, and Shakti, on the contrary, represents immense and dynamism that opens the way for manifestation. The whole world came into existence as a result of this unity and division between Shiva and Shaka, who were once united. The problem of this belief is that unmanifestation cannot be formed, nor can it be divisible. In this belief also, God is the cause of the spirit of rebelling, disunity and war in all that exists. The idea of becoming merged or absorbed into the supreme reality, Brahman, lies behind all Hindu thought. Brahman is universal and impersonal and pervades all things and all things that exist. It exists in Brahman. Since Brahman pervades the atom soul, therefore Brahman and Atom become identical and indistinguishable. The Hindu, in this way, concludes that Adama and Brahma are one and the same. They are just different words that express the same idea. As a result, every Hindu can say, I am Brahman, or I have come face to face with God, with a God. The oldest Hindu literatures are from the centuries between 1500 and 800 BC and are called the Vedic literature. It contains mostly myth stories about Hindu gods and goddesses and hero hymns, sacrificial rituals, and a little doctrine. Modern Hinduism has little to do with the ancient literature because of the gratitude additions and changes throughout the history of Hinduism. Reincarnation. Hindus believe when a person or animal dies, only the physical body dies. The soul does not die, but is reborn. This continuous process of rebirth is called reincarnation. In Hinduism, animals like human beings have souls, and in reincarnation, these souls evolve into human beings or decline from human beings into animals, which is false. And then they believe in karma. Literally, karma means deed or act. Karma speaks about how the future life of a person in the next reincarnation is affected by his present thoughts and actions. No one can escape the consequence of his action in this life after reincarnation. Good deeds will lead his soul to be born into a saint or a higher state in society. But evil deeds will lead his soul to be born into a lower state, even into the body of a worm. The reincarnation continues until a person achieves an irreversible spiritual perfection of divinity. But the unsuccessful souls wander through many incarnations before reaching a state of divinity, salvation. Yoga. Yoga means yoke or path. As a yoke disciplines an ox to walk a right path, so a yoga disciplines people to take control of their mind, body through exercitation, physical exercise, breathing techniques, and meditation, each dependent on various schools of yoga. Yoga is done to lead man to deification, helping man to discover the divine power within him and bringing him to unity with his eternal divine power, God, self, or Brahman. The exercise of yoga breaks the limitations of people's minds and bodies and helps them to reach the highest personal happiness in spite of outward difficulties. Hindus believe man is a tension of divine being and can apply his godly power to the daily life by concentrating not on the passing unreal world, but on the eternal and real Brahman. In this way, he will be able to release the divinity within himself and rise above materialism and reach towards love and peace. The questions and answers. What is the God ultimate reality in Hinduism? God in Hinduism is an absolute as well as a relative being and is an absolute being. It in Hinduism is one pre-existent, impersonal, unmanifested, and indescribable. As a relative being, it is manifested and multiplied into all that exists. What is the goal of Hinduism? The goal of Hinduism is to quit the world of impermanence and change and to be absorbed into one permanent and unchanging reality, God. How do Hindus see the world? They see the world less than real existence as the play of God, almost an illusion. Why was the world created? The creation in Hinduism, unlike Christianity, is not because God was happy to create and therefore he desired and created. Instead, the disagreements within the nature of the Hindu God amongst the inferior gods that make up the supreme God necessitated the existence of all that exists. Therefore, sadness, bitterness, lack of desire, and choice were the cause of creation. That is why Hindus do not see the world as being real. What is the relationship between the Hindu God and its creatures? What is the idea of the self-God? In Hinduism, all that exists is the result of God's manifestation and multiplication. The soul in each individual is identical with God. All creatures are one with God, and they are God. Everybody can say that I am a God. Anyone who does not believe in the idea of a self-God and says Brahma is one and I am another does not understand. Why do Hindus believe in many gods? How does the Bible approach the idea of self-God? The reason that Hindus believe in many gods, millions, is because everything is the revelation of God. Everybody is God, self-God. This belief has opened a way for people to worship God in whatever form they like. However, the Bible condemns the idea of a self-God. The Bible says, in the pride of your heart you say, I am a God. I sit on the throne of a God in the heart of the seas. But you are a man, not a God, for you think you are as wise as God. Ezekiel 28 verse 2 says, and then it says, the Lord is one, Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4. You read Mark 12, chapter 12 verse 29. Can the word reality be used as synonymous to the Hindu god or Brahman? Reality can be attributed only to a god that has a personal and is desirable, but not to an impersonal god. Can an impersonal God lead and guide people? An impersonal God cannot lead and guide people since it has no personality. To be able to relate to the personal being and fair be described the purpose, goal, and this destination or standard of life. Can a personal God manifest itself? And a personal God has no personalities to manifest. The Hindu belief is a contradictory belief. On one hand, it believes that God Brahman is in a personal abstraction that is beyond explanation and cannot be personally defined or described. But on the other hand, it is described as everything that exists. Hindus believe in inferior gods and also say that they desire to return the absolute supreme God. Can this transfer happen in the idea of inferior gods real? The Hindu notion is not real and is completely wrong. A complete God cannot manifest himself as incomplete, inferior beings. However, even if we accept this notion, its own philosophy will prove that it is not real. Inferior compared to the absolute means it is less pure, and therefore it is the mixture of good and evil, which proves that inferiors have a personality. In a logical sense promotion from a dualistic personality to the absolute impersonal, it is impossible. You cannot say all that exists and has a changing nature and personality can turn into something that will never have personality or become nothing. For example, we cannot say 5 persons plus 8 persons equals 0 person. In the same way, the 0 person and personal being also is not able to multiply itself into many. The Supreme God cannot reveal himself as a caprice inferiors. If so, he cannot be called supreme and more. That's why I believe God reveals Jesus Christ with all his fullness. Colossians chapter 1 verse 19. As a result, the idea of an inferior God is not supportable. Is it good for men and women to follow the Hindu gods? The existence of evil spirit or evil god and the nature of the Hindu god is a problem. It is not advisable for men and women to follow a god that has evil in itself. The Hindu god has 2 opposite natures, good and evil, and all inferiors that exist came into existence as a result of a collision between these two opposite natures. The darkness or the evil spirit in each person has also come from God. Why would someone follow a God who has given him evil? Can a God that is the cause of evil ask people to do good? On the other hand, just as man is inferior to God, so is the power of the evil spirit in each person inferior when compared to the evil spirit in the supreme God. Why then would a person wish to be a role absorbed into the absolute God if it means possessing greater evil? Why would someone desire to transform from a less painful situation to a super painful situation, or from less or formless inferior darkness to a greater super darkness? Can a Hindu God with the dualistic nature represent the real justice for which the heart of man longs? Can the Hindu God be the source of justice for the world? A God with a dull nature that is not able to get rid of the desires of its own negative nature and establish the justice within itself cannot be a good example for justice. Is the Hindu creator Brahma eternal? No, Brahma is a dependent of time. He will die after he completes his age. The universe is also endures as long as he lives. The belief in certain age for a creator in Hinduism contradicts its own philosophy that encourages people to be absorbed into eternity. If the creator is not eternal, the works of his hand, including humankind, also will not be able to see the eternity. And why is the potion Jesus as creator and savior holds superior to Brahma? The potion as Jesus creator and savior holds is superior and uncomparable to what Brahma holds. Jesus said, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began. John chapter 17, verse 5. The Bible states Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8. Read Daniel chapter 7, verse 27. He has supreme authority over all things in heaven and on earth. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 20, verse 22. And this means that he and his heavenly Father exist from eternity before the foundation of the world to eternity. Jesus will live forever and will have his followers with him forever. How can the idea of rebirth be against justice? The issue of rebirth goes against justice. The idea of rebirth asserts that every crime in the present life is the result of the bad deeds of the previous people who lived before the incarnation. A criminal and a victim were both bad in their previous lives, causing them both to be involved in the present crime. If this is the case, then the social law should not condemn criminals or reward the victims, because the idea of rebirth is not able to make a distinction between criminals and victims. Victims are also criminals at the same time. However, we know that human conscience and the social laws have clearly distinguished the difference between criminals and victims. When Hindus rise and press hard to gain their human rights, it means that they ignore their religious belief concerning the downfall of their so-called previous self. And when someone complains against invaders, it means that he or she does not accept that his or her bad acts in previous life were the causes of the present invasion. This criticism is applied to the Buddhists too. Buddhism too, since they also believe in reincarnation. How is the idea of rebirth a breach to human freedom? In Hinduism and Buddhism, no one is free from the actions of his previous being before the reincarnation. What happens now, what you are now, or what you have now, has its cause in a previous being. Your previous being before your reincarnation is now the master of your life. You cannot get away from it. You are not free to decide your own life. Future generations will also not be free from their previous generations. In the same way, when we go back to the beginning of creation or God's manipulation, multiplication, we see that evil deeds inside God caused the creation of choiceless people. So the lack of freedom comes from God is passed from generation to generation forever. With all these, it is strange that Hinduism teaches a meditation on God in order to reach freedom and perfection. What is freedom or perfection in Hinduism? Knowing that even God is neither free nor perfect. Why does God tie himself to the world by multiplying himself in the form of men and women? Does an authoritative God need self-torture, self-discipline, self-sacrifice, meditation, or prayer in order to release itself from the world and achieve perfection and holiness? In Hinduism, man's soul, Adam, is identical with Brahman, ultimately reality. However, the so-called all-powerful Brahman, existing as a man's soul, has chained itself to the world and now needs to work hard in order to release itself from the bondage of the world. It has to choose its own path to free its soul from the earthly ties by way of self-torture, self-discipline, self-sacrifice, hard work, meditation, or prayer. In order to cast aside everything it might have and closes its eyes to every pleasure of the world, hoping to atone for its sins and reach divinity. Itself is able to create a newer and better man or a divine being for the life after incarnation. We can see that in the intent of the contradictory nature of Hinduism, Hindu philosophy. The delusive nature of God caused division and multiplication inside its own being. Therefore, God had no choice but to surrender itself to the bondage of inferior multiplications as men and women to create catastrophic events for itself, which can now be seen in the daily lives of humanity and now tries to release itself from the pains which were a result of its own inner unsettlement. How many pages? Two more. Can Hinduism be a universal model for changing people from self-centeredness into a community of peace? In Hinduism, man is the center of his own life. Hinduism tries to change man from social ability to self-centeredness by teaching him to deprive himself from any fellowship with others and from all opportunities of social life in order to reach the perfection within him. Therefore, the Hindu model is to separate individuals from the community and make themselves unsociable. This is quite opposite to Christianity that rescues people from self-centeredness and brings them into a peaceful relationship with God and with others on earth and heaven. Colossians chapter 1 verse 20. Self-centeredness prevents self-giving, dedication in a family, society, or in the world as a whole. It considers each individual above the community of individuals and therefore causes uncertainty in people's relationships. Can man be identical with the single spirit of Brahman? We have seen that Brahman is not a single spirit, but a combination of opposite spirits. However, Hinduism says that each person is God, identical with Brahman, and will be absorbed into Brahman's oneness. The existing differences amongst many individuals and amongst many Hindu religious groups prove that there is a difference among the individual souls and their productions, and therefore they cannot be identical with a single impersonal spirit Brahman. The effect of a religious guru or a teacher on others, on the other hand, also has proved that a person in every situation is affected by others and cannot be identical with the so-called unchanging impersonal Brahman. There is a third reason why man cannot be identical with Brahman. Consider the changes that have occurred in Hinduism itself over time, the result of much interference throughout its history. The effect of people and time on each individual is opposite to the Hindu philosophy that believes man is the author of his own life and that he is a self-God with sufficient capacity or capability to protect his identity against change. So, is there a fixed creed in Hinduism that can distinguish the true enlightenment from the false? Who is the final authority to recognize the genuine enlightenment? There is not any fixed creed or standard in Hinduism to distinguish the true enlightenment from the false. The transcendent is generated through one's own personal thought and feeling. It is describable and disputable by others or by genuine wisdom, though everybody is believed to carry the same ultimate reality of Brahman within him herself as the source of absolute capacity and capability for understanding and distinguishing, however you say that word. In Hinduism, man is called God, but his eyes, ears, mind, heart, and conscience are not able to discover the most genuine belief by comparison. Each person is encouraged to discover the truth from within in one's own isolated manner, defining and describing it in one's own way. Even though the same so-called absolute God has manifested itself within everyone and is the God of all, it does not have unique enlightenment or heaven for all. Instead, everybody has his or her own enlightenment in heaven. Therefore, each enlightenment is true in itself for that particular self. The lack of the unique enlightenment in Hinduism contradicts its own belief when it says that all creatures tend to turn to the oneness of God. Oneness necessitates a unique enlightenment, whereas in Hinduism there are many. Because of this belief, Hinduism is not able to reject atheism. And or two, then there's just a difference between theism and polyism. Because if every man is the author of his own life in order to create his own creed and enlightenment, his discovery concerning atheism, polyism, or theism must all be called enlightenments. However, human knowledge and experience have proved that there is a difference between polytheism, theism, and atheism, between a religion that believes in reincarnation and impermanence of the soul, and one believes in the independence and permanence of a soul, between someone who is awake and another who is ignorant. Indeed, it is the absence of a unique enlightenment among Hindus that has caused them to believe in many gods. The truth cannot be limited to an individual self or dogma. Truth is absolute. Truth is abundant, unlimited, and beyond the boundaries of an individual's thoughts and feelings. Everybody needs to discover it in a wider realm. The Christian message is powerful when it describes the incapability of men when compared to God. No one is a good except God alone. Mark chapter 10 verse 18 and Luke chapter 18 verse 19. Therefore God has already made a distinction between true and false. Who is the final authority for establishing a way to the ultimate reality in Hinduism and Christianity? Hinduism begins and ends with man. Each person is the master of his own life, indeed the master of his future being after reincarnation, as we saw in the question 16. He is the only authority to establish a way to God. While man is imperfect, he is asked to create a perfect way to perfection. This is impossible because the Bible says, they people are zealous for God, but their zeal is not based on knowledge. Since they did not know the righteousness that comes from God and sought to establish their own, they did not submit to God's righteousness. Romans chapter 10, verse 2, verse 3. You do not have because you do not ask God. James chapter 4, verse 2. Christianity begins and ends with God. God is perfect and unchangeable, standard for imperfect, unrighteous, and unchangeable man. Perfect God creates a perfect path that leads to righteousness and perfection. But imperfect man cannot lead his life to perfection. God is the source and builder of the perfect life. Only He can save. The next chapter for tomorrow is Buddhism, false religion.